Hello and welcome to IBTimes TV. I'm Leanna Brinder, Business Editor for the International Business Times. Joining me now is Garry Clark. He's the Head of Policy Research at the Scottish Chambers of Commerce. So hi, thanks for joining us today.
No problems.
Tell me about the businesses under Scottish Chambers of Commerce and what you hear on whether they're voting yes or no.
Well, firstly, Scottish Chambers of Commerce, we're a membership organisation, and as a membership organisation, we've taken an impartial stance to the referendum because we recognise that there are members of ours who are on both sides of this debate. What we have done is measure business sentiment during the course of the referendum period, and we've certainly picked up quite a bit of support and businesses who are seeing opportunity with independence, but also businesses who are seeing risk with independence. And I think ultimately it'll be a question for businesses as to how they balance that opportunity with the risk.
We've spoken to some businesses that are seeing opportunity within independence, but what would you say are the biggest concerns through business sentiment for independence?
Number one, risk that businesses have identified in an independence scenario is, of course, the uncertainty that will create. Of course, we have very public debates over the uncertainty created by potential future currency within Scotland, but also other factors like what will taxation look like in an independent Scotland, what would our relationship with the European Union be. I think we would all want to continue, certainly most of our members would want to continue with membership of the European Union, but there are question marks over maybe the terms of what that might be and whether that would differ from our current engagement with Europe.
Well, you guys are in a unique position to see what's happening behind the scenes because, as you said, you're impartial, but also you have members that are both on the pro-independent side and pro-union side. But with polls seeming to show the yes and no vote almost neck and neck, have you seen tides turning in terms of support from one area or another from members, or has it actually just stayed the same?
We haven't. We don't routinely ask our members what their views are in terms of how they're going to vote. What we have done is measure opinions on the key issues that matter to them, and that will be issues whether Scotland becomes independent or whether Scotland remains part of the United Kingdom. We've actually seen a fair bit of consistency in terms of what the key issues are for business. So it is about currency, it is about taxation, it is about our relationship with Europe, and of course issues like regulation. Those have been absolutely consistent both throughout this year and last year actually. So in terms of the issues that businesses are looking at, they're certainly focusing on the same issues. Are we any further down the line in terms of understanding what the implications will be? Well, perhaps not, because I think a lot of that will depend upon the results of, if there is a yes vote, what the ongoing negotiations of independence from the UK will end up in.
When it comes to Friday, undoubtedly, whether it's a yes or a no vote, there is going to be some changes within Scotland. If Scotland didn't become independent, there's been a lot of promises from the political parties that Scotland would get more devolved powers around taxation. What would you see as the greatest opportunity or risks in terms of changes to having greater power within Scotland for income taxation, for instance?
Well, when we asked our members about their what they saw as an attraction of independence, and also what their views were in terms of if there's a no vote, one of the consistent views we got from our members were they want to see more decision making made in Scotland. So that was the number one attraction of independence, the number one opportunity that businesses identified. But similarly, in the case of a no vote, we'd almost 70% of businesses say we want to see more powers come to the Scottish Parliament. You know, that's fine, but what we do need to start to do, if it's a no vote on Friday, is look at what those tax powers might look like. We know that as a result of the Scotland Act 2012, there are already additional tax powers coming to the Scottish Parliament, largely in the form of controls over income tax, but also land and buildings transaction tax, which will replace stamp duty land tax, and the Scottish landfill tax, which will be an equivalent of the landfill tax in the rest of the UK. So we know there are changes afoot. We know that there are additional promises in terms of powers. And what I would say is that what businesses are looking for is that the political parties stick to their promises in terms of timescales. But also that we end up with a tax environment in Scotland which can be supportive for business. And that's not just about lower tax rates, it's about having the right balance of taxes to be able to create the kind of incentives that we in Scotland would want to see to attract and retain businesses here in Scotland.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And that was Garry Clark. He's the Head of Policy Research at Scottish Chambers of Commerce.